Oops.
That's the way to start. Do not. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am again joined by Lewis.
Hello everyone.
You guys have been really loving the videos where Lewis comes and jumps onto my channel, and especially when we were talking about buying our very first home. So I thought I'd get him on again so then we can have another discussion and share our tips on how to buy your very first home.
As first home buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we're just going to share the tips that we learnt along our journey to buying this house that we're in right now. And just like things that we picked up on, I guess.
Yeah, and hopefully it gives you some information if you are looking to buy your very first home on things to look out for before you think about even putting down an offer or even going to look at houses first.
Yeah.
So we do have 10 tips for you today, and I think that we should just jump straight into it. So we made a video together about buying our very first home from the very start of the process all the way to the end, and I'll make sure to link that down below because you guys really did seem to enjoy it. So
yep, let's do this.
All right. Okay, so tip number 1 is to know what you're comfortable repaying, and this will help to determine your budget.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess what we did was we kind of figured out how much we're comfortable repaying for the mortgage. So I think for us, we were comfortable paying $2,500 a month between us.
Yeah, maximum.
Yeah.
Maximum.
So before we even like thought how much we wanted to spend on a house, we first determined how much we could pay back, and then that kind of set the number that we could borrow.
Yeah.
So I think for $2,500 per month, it was around $500,000 to $600,000. So that was like our budget.
Yeah, I think it was around $600,000 to $660,000 for the actual home, and we also left an amount for like the buffer. So like $2,500 was the absolute max that we were willing to pay, and that was with higher interest rates. So we did take that into account as well, because obviously the interest rates at the moment are extremely low. So all home repayments are lower than what they usually would be. So we decided to give ourselves and budget for a higher repayment, so then if we did get a lower rate, then obviously we would be saving money, but also have enough of a buffer that if the interest rates changed and they went higher, then that still wouldn't go over our budget too much.
Yeah, and I think at the moment we're only paying $2,000 a month.
Yep.
So what we're actually paying is far below what we had as a maximum.
Yeah.
And I guess also by doing this method, like if the bank approves you for $900,000, then you might fall into the trap of being like, oh, like we can borrow $900,000.
Yeah.
So let's get a $900,000 house.
Yeah.
But if things were to go belly up, like if someone lost a job or you fell on hard times, then you're almost paying like double the mortgage repayment.
And like what you need as well. Like, do you need to buy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, do you need that? And I know that it's like I just said, that interest rates are so low, but you need to also take into consideration that they may go up.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're not just gonna, they can keep going low and low and low, but something's got to give before they jump back up again. So I think it's really important that when you have your budget, you have that buffer of, okay, well the interest rates are really low now, but what's the absolute maximum that we could afford comfortably?
Yeah, well said.
And I think that we stress comfortably as well. Like we never want to be stretched too thin.
Yeah.
Because we enjoy eating out, we like going to the movies, we don't really spend too much money, but we want to be able to have enough savings to go on like holidays and stuff. And I don't really want to be paying I don't want all my money to go towards a mortgage if it doesn't have to.
Yeah. So the next tip that we would recommend is to not fall in love with a particular suburb. So for ourselves, when we were first looking, we kind of had like a really narrow view of like suburbs that we wanted to live in. But going back to our first point, the budget that we kind of gave ourselves didn't fit within any of the suburbs we wanted to move to. Yeah. So we were kind of at a crossroads that do we borrow more and try to move into the suburbs that we want, and then be a little bit kind of far like outside of our expectations is what we can pay for the remortgage.
Yeah.
So we decided to move to a different suburb that we initially didn't think of, but all in all, it's ended up really well. But I guess we just didn't want to fall in love with a particular suburb and end up paying more than what we're comfortable for. Yeah,
and I think that the suburbs that we were looking at was we were going to be paying more but getting less for our money. Like in the video that I've put down below, we had a very specific list on what we wanted, and what we wanted we couldn't get in that suburb without paying an extra $100,000, and the house wouldn't even be like,
you pretty much said what I was trying to say.
Sorry.
No.
But I think that, like, for myself personally, it was probably more me that was very particular in the area that I wanted to live in. Like where we live now, I think I was originally like, ew, no.
I mean, I'm not from Melbourne where we are, so I wasn't too familiar with the suburbs, but you were a little bit, so. Yeah,
I was very particular in the location that I wanted to live in, and I think that the more that we kept looking at houses and realizing that what we were going to get in the area that I wanted to live in, it wasn't what we wanted. And we ended up falling in love with this suburb anyway, because it's right near the mountains, which I didn't even, like, when we even were talking about locations, I didn't even think about this area. And when they kept popping up, I was like, ew, no, like, I don't want to live in that location. But I ended up changing my mind because I probably love this area a lot more than the original area that I was thinking about. So I think that that's really important, is to not be so narrow-minded in where you want to live. Like, you need to have a bit of give and take.
I think it also kind of pushes you outside of your comfort zone as well, because a lot of things I hear from people, like, I can't afford an apartment or a house, and then they say, they like want to live in like Richmond or Brunswick, like inner city. And I think that's just like expectation versus reality. Like, that's unless you have like an insanely high paying job, then that's kind of like out of the reach for first home buyers. So you can even consider moving to like a cheaper city. Like, we could have moved to Ballarat, get like a 3-bedroom, $400,000 house. So you can like kind of push yourself to maybe move to even other places you wouldn't have considered as well. Like
in different areas too. Like, I think that, I agree with you. I think when I was younger, maybe in my early 20s, I was like, yes, like, I really want to live in like Brunswick or Richmond or Collingwood or something like that. But even like to rent there is absolutely ridiculous. And I think that especially if you're a first home buyer, this is just your first home.
Exactly.
Like, it's your entry point into the market. So you're never going to get exactly what you want and where exactly you want it unless you're really, really lucky. Or again, you have all that money saved and you do have a really high paying job, so then you can afford to live there. But realistically, first home buyers are just regular old plebs like us. You need a compromise. Where it's necessary. All right, so tip number 3 is to be flexible with your deposit. I think that when we originally decided to buy a house, we were really determined for that 20% down payment, so then we didn't have to pay the lender's mortgage insurance. But I think as we kept going and getting a bit further deep into looking into our home, we realized that we needed to be a little bit flexible with that 20% deposit, because if we had gone with the whole 20%, we would be left with nothing in the end to move into the house.
Pretty much. Like, if we had the 20%, but if we were to pay that, we'd only have like maybe a couple of $1,000s left. So we'd have nothing to like pay for furniture, the settling fees, or like an emergency fund if something was to go wrong as well. So, because like all of the books, they're like, like always pay 20%, like the barefoot investor. And I do agree with that, but it kind of goes back to that expectation versus reality. Like, we didn't want to wait any longer. Like, we could have like waited it out, saved up for another 2 years, but we were kind of at that stage where we were looking for 6 months, that we just wanted to get a house. So we ended up paying a 10% deposit. So we did have to pay the LMI, which we weren't too happy about, but at the end of the day, it allowed us to get our first house. So
it allowed us to get into the home that we wanted, to be able to renovate the home, refurbish the home to what we wanted it to be, as well as furnish the entire house and not stress about the settlement fees.
Exactly. And also have like a buffer left over.
So if something did go wrong, like, I don't know, we needed a new oven, or the water system broke when we moved in, or something like that, we wouldn't have been stretched financially because we had that money saved. And I think that, like, even though we had to pay the LMI, it didn't really bother us. Like, our what are they called, the mortgage broker, she did all the calculations, and she was like, it's going to cost you this much over the 30 years, and we were like, oh, well, that's not even that much. Like, that we're happy with that, because we allowed it allowed us to have our home exactly the way that we wanted it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and obviously this isn't like financial advice, so that's just what we do. But we don't want to say like, oh, like do 10%, because obviously it's all personal. But
I think that as well, like some people will have that 20% down and they know that they'll have to have extra money. Like they know that, okay, well, I'll have my 20% and that's just for the deposit.
Yeah.
But I know that I'll still need extra money to refurbish or refurnish or like for the settlement fees.
Yeah.
But I think that if you don't have the luxury of having that 20% deposit plus extra, then just think about it.
Yeah, and I guess in some cases people put that extra onto the loan amount as well.
Yeah.
So, but we didn't want to do that as well.
Yeah, we wanted to pay for everything out of our own pocket to paint and do new floorboards and everything for this house.
Yeah. So the next tip that we have was to have a pretty good idea of the type of home that you're looking to get. So based on our budget and the suburbs that we could live in, that kind of determines what type of house we could get. So for us, it was like a 2-bedroom house or like a 2-bedroom townhouse unit. So that was kind of like what we wanted. But then there's all the other things within a house that like you personally would like. Yeah. So like for me, it was like a bath. It was like an outdoor area, gas, cooktop, and I think that was pretty much it for me. But for you, you had like heaps of other stuff. So
I had a fair bit of like quiet area, like at
I was the same as that.
Not on like a busy street, not like a front house, like a lot more private.
I was the same.
Bushy area. I think that the ultimate was to have like a fireplace, but I mean you're not going to get that in like a 2-bedroom unit in Melbourne. And I think that also like we wanted to know the kind of home that we could afford, but we also had to think about the timeline as well. So obviously we're first home buyers, but is this actually going to be our only home that we buy? And I think that that's really important to know as well. Like but the first home that you buy is most likely not the home that you're going to live in forever. So if it doesn't have everything that you want first up, that's okay. Because later down the track, when you've got equity and maybe you've saved up a little bit more money and you want to upsize or you want to move location, you might be able to get that in that home. Because I think for us, I would love to keep this house forever, and I don't know, it's very, very dependent on personal circumstances and life circumstances, like having babies maybe. And if we were to decide to go down that track, I think that we would have to get a bigger area for escaping.
Pretty much.
But like realistically, I would want, like the backyard and like a bigger area for if that was to ever happen. But if it wasn't to ever happen, then I would be more than happy to stay here.
Yes, when we were looking at buying a house for the first time, we actually made separate lists of what we wanted in that house. So we actually did like an exercise of like writing down like the actual the like necessities that we wanted in a house and like bonus things that would be good to have but not essential. So I think we actually did that exercise like in 2 separate rooms.
We were
like
completely separate. We didn't talk to each other.
And then we came back and like cross-referenced the list and like combined those, like your non-negotiables and my non-negotiables, and then we like compromised on a few things, and then we like combined that together because we were buying a house together. But I guess if you're single, you could just create your own list, which would be a bonus. But but
I think that's still important to do as well, like to make a list of what was essential for you in a home and what was negotiable.
Exactly.
Even if you are single.
Because you can go to an open house and you could like fall in love with it, like it might be beautifully designed. And you might put down an offer only later to realize that it doesn't have like gas or a bath or like it's not on a quiet area, like things that you actually would have liked but you didn't really kind of think of or like put on paper.
You were just swept up in that moment of oh my gosh, like this house is so beautiful, like I could so imagine myself living here. But then when it comes to actually like moving in, you're like it doesn't have that and that.
Or you might even be aware of its downsides, but you might be so kind of like blown away by the design. So like you kind of don't even think about those things. But
and I think in the end we were pretty ruthless. Like as soon as we walked into a house and it didn't have like 2 of the whatever essential things that we wanted, we were like, nah, we're happy to keep looking.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, we were looking for about 6 or 7 months.
We were looking for a long time.
A long time, so I guess that did drag out our process. So we could have been a bit more flexible, but I think at the end of the day, it did work out pretty well because eventually we did find something that both pleased us and we were both happy with. So I think the patience did pay off in that aspect.
And we did fall in love with many houses.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, and hindsight is such a fantastic thing. Hindsight, I'm glad that we didn't get them.
Yeah.
Because they weren't the perfect house for us, and this is.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 5th tip that we have for you is to make sure that you have money set aside when it comes to your settlement day. So you've got the home, you've made the offer, the homeowner's accepted your offer, and now you're going through the process of finalising everything.
Yeah.
Our tip for you is to make sure that you have an idea from your conveyancer of how much you will need on settlement day.
Yeah. Yeah, because you got to pay the conveyancing fees.
Yeah.
And then there was other fees that we were kind of aware of, but we had no idea how much they were. So, say you moved in 2 months into the house where there's the council rates.
Yep.
So if you move in 2 months from when it starts, then you have to, I think, pay the other 80%.
You do, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and then there's insurance costs if you come in halfway through the insurance. And then those were the main things, but I think there was a couple other little things that kind of caught us up a little bit as well.
And settlement fees, they're not cheap. They're not a couple of hundred. They're a couple of thousand, and I don't think that we really had an idea of how much it actually was. I think our settlement costs were around, just over $3,500.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Sounds about right.
It was around $3,500, and you have to have that money in the account for 2 to 3 business days before settlement, because the bank will do a check to make sure that that money's in there. So then when it comes to settlement day and everything's signed off and the conveyancers have finished talking to each other and the homeowners hand over the keys, that money will be withdrawn.
Yeah.
And if there isn't money, or if there isn't enough money in that account, you won't be able to settle on that day.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of goes back to our deposit tip.
Yeah.
If we were to do 20%, I don't think we would have been able to pay all those extra fees. So, yeah, I think that's definitely something to be aware of, because we were somewhat aware, conscious of how much it would be, but it's kind of that, what is it going to be kind of thing? It could be 1,000 or 5. You really don't know.
You don't actually know until, I think it's actually on settlement day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure our mortgage broker was have at least $5,000 in there, or something, around about that amount.
Yeah. Because
you won't really know the specific number until very, very close, if not on settlement day.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get to that day and think, what happens if I don't have enough money in there? I'm not going to be able to get the keys.
Yeah.
I think just have as much money as you possibly can, and also ask your mortgage broker what would be the maximum amount that I would need, and they're pretty spot on with the money.
Yeah, for sure. So the next tip that we have is to be aware that the advertised price on realestate.com.au is almost never the price for what the house or unit actually sells for. So I think after a couple of weeks of looking, we quickly realized that the price that you see on realestate.com is almost never the price that it actually sells for.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's illegal for the real estate agents to kind of underprice it. But it's kind of a very grey area, because I guess it's just supply and demand. You have a rough idea, but at the end of the day, it's just you want people through the door. So if you get more people through, that drives up the price. So it's kind of it's a double-edged sword, I guess. So.
It also depends on the market as well. So you might see a house that's advertised for $500,000 that's going up to $550,000.
Yeah.
But it's all, again, supply and demand. So if there are a lot of people that are willing to pay more for that particular home, then it obviously will sell for more.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I guess in the real estate kind of agent's defense, it is kind of dependent on the market as well.
Yeah.
Because when we were first starting to look, I guess the market was kind of cool.
It was low.
It was quite low.
It was really low.
The clearance rates were not the best, but the prices that they were selling for were maybe just a little bit above the advertised price.
Yeah.
And then after about 4 months of looking, the market was kind of going up a lot.
Yeah.
And then if a unit was advertised from $550 to
600,
600, it would almost always sell for $650, $680, maybe even $700, way above the actual advertised price. And these weren't auctions; they were just private sales.
Yeah.
So that was just something that I guess we had to get used to. Like if we saw a house advertised for 500, then in our minds we'd be like, oh, it's actually 600.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
It's closer to the high. It's always more. It will almost always sell for higher than what it is advertised. So I think that what would be my tip for you is when you're in realestate.com, put what you're willing to pay lower. Because you're almost going to pay more anyway. Like this house was advertised 500 to 550.
Yeah.
I mean, we paid $23,000 more than what it was advertised for.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's because the demand for around this area was higher than the supply. Because there weren't that many houses on the market in those days, back in a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people that were wanting to buy. So then they were paying more and more and more. Yeah. And that happened with us when we put in an offer. I think it was our very first offer. That house sold for almost $40,000 more than what it was advertised.
Yeah. And I think nowadays, like towards the end of COVID, like it looks like almost everything are auctions.
Yeah.
So I guess again, like it's kind of gone full circle. Like there was a big dip and now it's picking up again. Where it looks like the prices are just far exceeding like the list prices as well.
Especially in the suburbs because people are now being able to work from home.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a good tip. Like maybe search below what you're actually looking for.
Yeah.
And I guess just not get too disenfranchised or like too disappointed because I guess that's just...
It's the market.
It's just the market.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, unfortunately, but yeah.
Another thing I was going to say as well is that if you see the advertised price for the home, talk to the real estate agent. Ask them explicitly, how much is the homeowner willing to let this house go for? Because they will be able to say, or they are looking more for that $550,000 mark.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh no, they're happy to have it between the 500 to 550. Like, no, what are they specifically hoping to get in order for them to sell their home? How much do they want to sell it for?
Yeah, and that's helpful because when you put down an offer, you might put down 515, but if the seller's like set on 550, then they're just gonna not even consider it. So I guess it kind of saves time during that process.
It saves that back and forth, and it also kind of gets rid of all those people that are putting very, very low ball offers.
Yeah.
Whereas if the homeowner knows that they want to sell it for a particular price, you're more likely to get the home if you offer what they want.
Yeah.
If you're willing to obviously offer what they want.
Yeah.
So tip number 7 is just for you to be aware that when you get a pre-approval from a bank, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the bank's approval for that loan.
It was really confusing when we first started looking for our first house because you go to the bank to get like pre-approval.
Yeah.
Like they first analyze your income and your past history of income and your job and whatnot. And then they kind of determine whether or not they're willing to borrow money to you.
Yeah.
And then from that stage, then you actually go on to the pre-approval stage. And then, so you get accepted for pre-approval. And then once you find a house and maybe put down an offer, then the actual bank has to assess the house, the actual valuation of the house, and whether or not it's actually aligned with what they're willing to borrow against.
Yeah.
So then they do like a third check for pre-approval, because if the house valuation is way above what you're, way below what
way below or way above.
Yeah. Then they're less likely to give you the actual loan.
Yeah.
So for us, when we put down an offer, we always put down subject to pre-approval.
Yeah.
Because that means we weren't kind of
liable.
To buy the property. So it was a really, really confusing kind of process for pre-approval, but I guess that's just something to be aware of. The approval, pre-approval, and then subject to pre-approval. Yeah,
it is a long process as well because the bank, first of all, needs to assess if you are going to be a good candidate for them.
Yeah.
They check your job history, references if they need it, your tax history,
yeah,
all of that, all of your credit history. You put down even Uber Eats, they double check. So if you are a massive Uber Eats eater,
they're really
they're very, very strict these days. So I would even suggest that maybe 6 months before you go and get your pre-approval, or if you're thinking about getting a pre-approval, try and come back on, the Afterpay, like buy now, pay later schemes, Uber Eats, because they do double check that. Because if you're constantly using credit, even if you don't need to, they're less likely to even give you a pre-approval.
Yeah, not buying the Gucci slippers and all the all
they
those
do.
extra things.
They check all of your bank statements. They ask for 3 months, 3 months worth of bank statements. And if you're, constantly paying back money to Afterpay, well then if you can't pay for an item up front, then they're going to be thinking, well, how are you going to be able to pay for your mortgage?
Yeah, exactly.
So they're really strict with that now. Luckily, we don't use either of those. So our pre-approval was pretty good, even though they were a bit sketchy about you.
Yeah, being a business owner.
Yeah, so if you are a business owner, that's also something that you need to be aware of. That it does, especially if you own your own, if you own your own business, it does actually limit the amount of banks that are willing to give you money and to borrow against you, especially if your business is new.
Yeah, and mine was only a year old, and they're typically like 2 years of history. Yeah. So I guess that really kind of narrowed down who we could borrow from.
Yeah.
And that kind of rolls on to something else I was just going to say that was to look into getting a mortgage broker, which I think is pretty obvious nowadays, but just in case you weren't thinking of that, because, if you're like with a certain bank for life, then you're most likely going to go to them. It's like, I'm looking to get a home loan, but if you really shop around, you can get really good deals. And if we tried to go with any of our banks, neither of them would have approved us because of the business I have. Yeah. So that's why we were kind of found the bank that we're using now. And using a mortgage broker was helpful because they helped us kind of narrow it down and find a bank that fit both of us.
Well, they're free too. Like they're no obligation. They're completely free. They work for you because they work based on commission from the bank. Yeah. So you never actually pay the mortgage broker anything. They get paid through your mortgage loan. Yeah,
they get a trailing commission based on the lifetime of your loan or however long you're a customer for.
Yeah, so it's in their best interest to get you the best deal because you can always switch mortgage brokers. Yeah. Whereas if they keep you updated, like ours kept us updated with rate drops and putting it into like a fixed loan or variable or whatever. Yeah. So it was in her best interest to get us the best deal because otherwise we can switch to another mortgage broker that will get us a better deal. Yeah. And then she'll lose her commission. So just keep that in the back of the mind. I think mortgage brokers are really maybe under-resourced sometimes. Yeah. Because a lot of people think that only rich people will go to a mortgage broker, but they're free. So go and have a chat to them. They're absolutely amazing. Yeah. All right, so the next tip that we have for you is for you to decide if you want to buy your house at an auction or if you want to go through private sale. So as first home buyers, I think that it's really important that if you do want to purchase a home at an auction, you need to keep in the back of the mind that all auctions are unconditional. Yeah. As in, you can't do a building and pest, you can't do any other checks after you actually buy the home. All of that has to be done prior to purchasing the home. So like I said, all auction purchases and bids and everything, they're unconditional, which means that the bank has already said, yes, we're happy to loan you $800,000 and you can go and buy that house that you're wanting to do, that you're wanting to buy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess there's kind of pros and cons with with both options. So I guess like you said with auctions, you don't really have that kind of choice of doing like building and pest, and you don't have the subject to pre-approval as well. So if you do win an auction and you haven't
done those things,
and your pre-approval hasn't been accepted or you're undervalued for what you pay, then they won't give you the loan, and then you somehow have to find the money to pay for the house. So that can put you in a really tricky situation. So I guess auctions are kind of more for those that already have a house or equity that they can use. But for first home buyers, I mean, for ourselves personally, we didn't want to put ourselves in that situation. So that's why we did the offer, because then we could do subject to pre-approval, building and pest, and any other conditions that you might have as well. So
it just means that if you do win at an auction and you haven't done your building and pest and you haven't got your subject, like you haven't done your finance approval and all that, and if you do win the auction, you're liable for tens of thousands of dollars paying the bank if they don't give you the loan. Yeah. So you need to pay that homeowner like fees for backing out of that auction. Yeah. Whereas with a private sale, you have the option of doing subject to pre-approval, which means that we're happy to offer you this amount, but we can only offer you this amount if our bank says that we can borrow that amount. Yeah. And then if the bank says, no, we can't offer you the loan, then you can back out with no fees, no risk or anything like that.
Yeah. And as well, like if you still do like the house, but it is at an auction,
Yeah.
you actually still can put an offer in prior
After.
to auction as well. So you can put in a really good offer to kind of really tempt the buyer, to really tempt the seller in to sell the house and not go to auction at all. So there still are options to like not go down the auction route as well.
I think that comes back to the tip of talking to the real estate agent.
Yeah.
So if you really don't want to do an auction, you can talk to the real estate agent and say, look, I'm not comfortable doing an auction. How much is the homeowner wanting to sell the home for? And if they say $1 million, be like, okay, well, I will offer you $1 million and like $1,010,000, and they're more likely to sell it to you prior to the auction. But a lot of people sell their home at auction because they want more money.
Yeah, I mean, when we were looking, there weren't many auctions because it was kind of like an in-between market. But I guess when it's a hot market, then people obviously want to get as much as they can, so they do tend to pick the auctions. But even one of your mum's friends sold their house that was originally going to go to auction, but someone actually put in a private offer before that as well. So
an offer that they couldn't refuse, and it comes with settlement as well. So if the homeowner really does want to sell their home quickly, you can offer them a quicker settlement, or if they want to take longer selling their home, then you can offer them a longer settlement, because that comes with it as well, because some homeowners don't want to leave their home for like 6 months, others want to leave their home in 30 days. So you need to ask the real estate agent as well, look, I'm happy to offer you this, what kind of settlement are they after? Which is what we did. We asked the homeowner here, would they be comfortable for a 60-day settlement? They were, and that's how we got the home too.
Yeah, exactly. Like talking to the real estate agent is actually really helpful, because they can give you insights that you won't find on the brochure or on the website. Like, because your sister, when she purchased her house, I think it was like 100...
It was a 120-day settlement.
Yeah, so I think that's something that kind of set her apart, because I don't think many people would have been too keen on doing that. So if you know that information beforehand, you can give that in your initial offer, and that can kind of really make you stand out. So like, even if you put down less, but you have that kind of extra condition that the seller's actually looking for, then that kind of can give you that advantage as well. Yeah,
and if you're not like too fussed about settlement, you can just put down on your offer like whatever suits the homeowner.
Yeah. So for tip number 9, it is to do a building and pest inspection. So for us, whenever we put an offer in, we did a building and pest inspection. So essentially what that is that some independent contractor or builder will come out and assess the house, look at the stumps, slab, the roof. They just assess everything to ensure that everything is like structurally sound. There's no like pests or termites that might be damaging the building. And that kind of just gives you like an extra ace up the sleeve. Because you don't want to obviously buy a house that's not in good condition or is close to falling apart. And one thing that you can also do is actually go with the building and pest inspector, because they actually give you like a pretty thick booklet of the report. And it actually can be a little bit confusing to like go through it and actually assess like what's good and what's not. Because the actual report will only fail if there's like a really like a massive structural flaw that actually deems the house unsellable, I believe. So actually you actually can go with the inspector, and they can kind of like explain to you in like layman terms like what everything is, because there is like a lot of like lingo in the report that like even myself I wasn't too familiar with, and I'm like a draftsman as well. So I think it would help to go with the actual building inspector. And I think that along with the building and pest as well is to make sure that you do your final checks of the house before settlement. So you have the opportunity to view the house, I think within the last week or two before settlement. And our advice to you would be to check the oven, check all the sockets, which is something we didn't do. And not that we regret it, because nothing was like bad happened, but we didn't get the chance to, and I think that's like, you really do have to push to check that all the sockets work, that the hot water system's okay, that the oven is okay, because I have heard stories of people that haven't done that, and then it's gone to move-in day and the oven's not working. And it hadn't been working for a while. So I think that that's really important, that you do go in and you do double check, especially electrical, because
if something does go wrong after you've settled, you're liable for it.
Yeah.
But if something's not right before you settle, the homeowner has to pay for it.
Yeah.
In order to settle.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. And also you try to want to look. You try to want to have a look when all of the furniture is outside of the house.
Yeah.
Because if you go in where like the fridge is in the cavity, there actually might be like a hole in the plasterboard behind the fridge or under the rug, like where you initially went in and looked all good. But with all the furniture removed, you can see potential flaws that you might have not seen at all when you first went into the house.
Yeah, you just need to be a bit more aware of what things will look like, and like, not saying that people are sneaky and people do it on purpose, but you just want to, for your own sound mind, like you need to do it.
Yeah, and like the actual seller might have like not even realised that, you know, it might have happened years ago and they just completely forgot about it. So it's not like they're trying to
hide anything.
It's just, it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. So the last tip that we have for you is to set some money aside for new or secondhand furniture. So obviously when you are living or renting in a home and then you move into another home, sometimes either furniture doesn't fit or it doesn't like suit the area that you're hoping to like live in. It's always good to keep money to the side in order to not refurbish but maybe update your home if you need to.
Yeah.
So for ourselves personally, we didn't own any furniture.
Yeah, we had nothing.
We had a bed. We had a bed. That
Yeah.
was it. We didn't have a couch. We didn't have a coffee table. We didn't even have knives. We had absolutely nothing.
No plates, no fridge.
Nothing.
Literally nothing.
Literally nothing. Literally nothing.
Literally nothing.
So I think that it's really important to keep, you know, even if it is just new plates, because like when you're going into a new home, there is like that, like I just want to make it like mine. And a lot of the time you do want to buy that new home decor. So it could even be, you know, keep aside like $100 if you want to buy a few new things.
Yeah.
But definitely like the layout of the home is obviously going to be different to the one that you're living in now. And sometimes, you know, a couch might not fit into the new homes, and so then you might need to get a different couch to be able to feel more comfortable in that living space.
Yeah, I'd definitely recommend like living in the house for a few days to kind of see what will fit. Like even the fridge, like certain ways the fridge doors open, like that can be really annoying if you have to do it every single day.
Yeah.
And also like the shapes of couches and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think, did we cover that in the last video? Like how we like sourced everything like secondhand off Facebook Marketplace and everything like that, because we were on a pretty tight budget. So I think we can only spend a couple of $1,000s for everything. Yeah. So we got our fridge, washing machine, all of the appliances pretty much secondhand off Facebook Marketplace. So that allowed us to like splurge on things that we like really cared about, I guess. So yeah.
Well, we hope that you managed to get some sort of new information, or it kind of reiterated to you the important tips that you need to know before buying your home.
Yeah, I guess we kind of wanted to condense all of the tips from the last video we made on this, but I feel like this is almost just as long.
I feel like it is, but it's always good to have the conversation though.
Yeah, exactly, because I feel like there's a lot of like nuances that you can't just say in like 30 seconds. Yeah, like there's a lot of, you know, ifs and buts and personal, like it's all personal as well. And
it's good to get different views as well, because we never always saw eye to eye. So yeah, I think that it's that if you are wanting to buy your first home and you're wanting to buy your first home with a partner, maybe get them to sit down with you and listen to this video and watch this video and have that conversation about, you know, what's necessary and what's not. But I think the last tip that I have for you, which we didn't write down, but before you do buy your very first home, if you are buying it with another person, is to be on the same page.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's a 30-year commitment. You're stuck with me for 30 years.
Yep.
So I think that you both need to, you know, be on the same page and be open to having these kinds of discussions, even if they might be a bit difficult or set you up for different arguments. I think you both need to be understanding and have fun.
Couldn't agree more. 100% have fun.
Have fun. I actually really miss it. I said to Lewis the other day, like, oh, like there's maybe if we could walk past an auction, we should, or like an open home, we should go in and have a look. Yeah. I actually miss going in and like looking at the different homes. Yeah,
me too. And like I used to love like bidding on stuff on eBay, so it kind of like triggers that like hunt for trying to find that thing that you're after kind of thing. So yeah, have fun when you're doing it. So
and enjoy.
Enjoy. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to Lewis for coming back on my channel. You guys seem to love having him on here. So thanks for coming.
No problem. Anytime.
Make sure that you do like this video and share it on Facebook. Share it wherever you like, if you would like to, and leave us a comment down below if you're a first home buyer. Any tips and tricks maybe we may have missed and that you would like to share with the community as well.
Yeah, because these are just our kind of tips and trips. Tips and tricks. I mean, they're definitely not like, I'd say like the best ones. They're just kind of things that we've picked up on. So
what we think is important too.
What we think is important. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see like other people's tips and tricks, because I'm sure we would have missed a few things along the way. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. And I will see you in a video sometime in the very near future. Bye.
See ya. Okay, so the next tip we have is to decide whether or not you want to pay
to buy
to buy
a house via private offer or auction.
Can you do this one? Can you do the intro? Because I can't talk.
To okay, offer versus auction.
Or maybe I'll try one more time.
Okay. Tip your mate.
Okay, so the next tip that we have is to decide whether you want to buy a house via auction or via private offer. No?
Via.
That's what you said.
Via.
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 Oh. Oh, Jesus. I'm going to have to do that again.
Why? No, just cut it. Just edit.